Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Okay, we're continuing that game that I started a while back, a few weeks ago. This is a game where I'm testing rules that I haven't used before, or just house rules that I'm making up to see how well they work in a game. And right now we're in the middle of 1941. I know I said I was going to wait till the end of every year to make a video, but where things sit right now, it's a very interesting part of the game, and so I thought I would show you this, especially over here on the Pacific side of the board. It's extremely interesting what is about to happen and why things are done the way that they're done. And before I get to that, though, I want to take you to the other side of the board and show you something, to show you why it's important to take the time to and to know the rules and everything. I was on the phone yesterday for a while, texting back and forth with Will Hanson, one of the creators of this game, trying to talk about rules and stuff like that, clarify a few things. And like there's this one thing where the Germans, they have what's called Soviet first strike. So the Germans can hit the Soviets when they decide to declare war on them. They can attack as much as they want, and they will get +1 everything, planes, land units, everybody gets +1, and the Russians get -1. And then the Russians go after the Germans. The Germans are only allowed to attack one place, the Russians are only allowed to attack one place where the Germans are. And so it's a big deal, right? But I screwed up though. I should have talked to Will before I'd done the German turn, but I talked to him before I did the Russian turn. Because what happened was the Germans, they wanted to get into place for that. So what they did was they went and they took Romania, and they took this place, and they took this place here. Now when you do that, what happens is the Russians get a D12 to roll to up their income. But it probably would have been okay if I would have just moved up to Romania, right? That would have been a D12, but this is also a D12, and this is also a D12. So 3 D12s rolling, and the Russians were up to their wartime income. So they were able to declare war if they wanted to, right? The Germans are all ready to go. They've got all their stuff there. Like you see these guys here, that's all the units that are on the cards over here as well, right? And so the Germans are all ready to go, and then the Russian turn comes along. Bam! The Russians declare war on the Germans. So Germany loses that Soviet first strike ability because they never took it. So I mean that's a big deal in this game. Like they don't get to hit the Soviets now, with the Soviets being weakened and then with their lack of ability to come back at them. So what they did, the Soviets, they took out a torpedo boat destroyer down here with a coastal sub, and that's the only thing they did to the Germans. The other thing they did on their turn was they took out all of Sweden here. They had the airborne guy fly in because there's nothing in there, so all he had to do was drop in there. They had all of these guys move up from Finland and take Stockholm, and then they had their boats and their planes go in and take the Swedish Navy in there. Because what would have happened with the Russians declaring war on Germany, then when afterwards then they declared war on Sweden, that would have meant all the Swedish guys were German, which would have meant all the boats were German. So there was 3 boats there, good ones too. Those boats on the German turn would have joined those boats and would have made it a pretty formidable navy. And so even though the Russians had to break up their navy, they brought in 2 subs and 3 planes, and they took those boats out while they could, right? Now their navy here is vulnerable to attack, but they do have these planes here that can scramble into the sea zone. So we'll see, and there's also this British boat in there. We'll see if the Germans want to lose that navy or not, because I mean they wouldn't lose it all, but they'd certainly lose some of it, and probably lose their ability to build a substantial navy for the rest of the game, right? So anyway, this is what I mean by a really interesting part of the game. Like all of this happened in this year, like the first half of this year, where the mistake was made, and then the Russians gained the upper hand here. And the Russians also have a ton of money too, because they won the Civil War. They've taken out Finland, they've taken out Sweden, so that's lots of money, and they've got Spain, they've got Portugal, and they moved their navy up here. They were gonna, they were gonna move on the Germans up here if they could, right? And also with them being at war, down goes Tankograd. That's one of my house rules. That's the rule where this is a factory just for tanks, and you can build up to 3 tanks here on a turn at 1 IBP cheaper, and that's any size of tank, right? That's small, medium, large tank, whatever, right? I have a factory that's, I think it's in Richmond right now. That's it. That's a suburb of Vancouver. I'm tracking it from Shapeways. And this is supposed to be the Stalingrad marker here, but I was hoping that it would arrive on time. Anyway, I've got a factory coming that's going to be my Tankograd. But anyway, there's nothing there because the Russians, if the Germans had declared war, then this would have went down, then the Russian turn would have come, and the Russians would have put tanks there. But because the Russians declared war, then this went down. They didn't have it at the start of their turn. They couldn't put any tanks on. But that doesn't matter. They'll put some on next time, right? So what's really interesting now is what's going to happen next in the Pacific. Before I get there, though, look at this. This is all capital ships here going down. Big ones, too. But this one here is the Vanguard. This is the very last battleship ever built in the world. It was a large battleship. It was a fast battleship. And I couldn't find any stats on it, so I'm just going to use the same stats as the Iowa class battleship. I thought that it would be they do have, I can't remember what it's called. The Prince of Wales was one of them anyway. Some class of British battleship. But this isn't one of those. I did some digging, and this isn't that class. They built this to be better than that other class, so I can't use those stats. So the closest I can do is use the Iowa class. But all of this stuff's about to go on. You got the Yamato class. There's another Bismarck going down for the Germans, and the Iowa class, and then of course a couple of fleet carriers. But then there's also these 3 carriers here. I put them to the side, but not on the thing here, because what happens is when the Americans and the Japanese go to war, then they all of a sudden get 3 small carriers. The Japanese do. So that's going to happen this turn. So what happened this turn? Let's just set this down for a second here. Put it back far enough so that you can see the Japanese and the Americans. Now the Japanese have there's only 1 Chinese territory left. So all they've done is fought the Chinese. They haven't fought the Russians. They haven't fought the British. The British have thought about attacking them, but they haven't. The American income went up really fast. They rolled 3 11s in a row, and then this last turn they rolled an 8. So they're only 3 away from being able to declare war. They're at 60 now, and they need to be at 63. Then they can declare war on Japan. So that's why Japan is doing what they're doing right now, and I'm going to do that in more detail. The last game I played, I was the Axis, and the Japanese were just I was extremely fortunate with them. I managed to gain 7 victory points for them. I think there's only 8 possible ones the Japanese could possibly get, but I got 7 of them because of a mistake that the Americans made. And see, this is, you really have to know the rules, and you really have to try to avoid those kind of mistakes. What my opponent did, here was my pointer. What my opponent did in that game was, at this point in the game where the Japanese Navy was huge and everything, and the American Navy was quite sizable, was that the American Navy came down to Hawaii. They were sitting back here, they were fine, but they all moved up to Hawaii. I was planning on going after the Dutch Islands, right? But then they went there and they sat there, and there was 4 of us playing the game, so I had the time to sit down and read through the rules. And one of the things that the Japanese have is that they have this kind of strike ability. The one that I just talked about with the Germans. So they can go with their boats and their plane with their boats. They could go one space extra, and then all of their boats will be +1 on attack, and all of their opponents' boats, whether that's the Americans or whether it's the Dutch or the British or the Anzac, all of their stuff will be -1. That's only on the first round. In the case of the Germans, that's for the whole thing, right? But with this one here, it's for the first round, and it's devastating. I tell you, like in this case here, I've split up the Japanese Navy, but I had the entire Japanese Navy sitting right here, and he moved up to Hawaii, and so then you count it off, and man, I was far enough away. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get that extra space, plus you're at a naval base, or in this case, it would have been a shipyard, right? So the transports and the battleships only go 2 spaces normally, but they're at a shipyard, so that's 3 spaces, and then they've got that extra one that's 4 spaces. So even though it looks like you're a long ways away, you're on the other side of Japan over here, you can hit Hawaii from there just on that one turn, right? And only 1 space. So bam, I sunk the entire American Navy there, brought some transports, dropped some dudes down on Hawaii. I could have even done better if I was just thinking about it. I didn't realize. But there was an American victory condition where you get a point if nobody's ever stepped on American soil. Like not Hawaii, but like the lower 48, the main part of America. And it doesn't, I don't think it includes Hawaii either. But like the eastern states or the western states. If I would have just put 1 dude down on there, then they would have lost a victory point at the end of the game. It doesn't matter though. I mean, the game ended and I won that game. But so I killed the entire American Navy here. Then he put more Navy down. Then I went over and killed that American Navy too. Like that's how devastating that attack is. So then I limped back with my battleships that were all damaged, and the American Navy was devastated for the rest of the game. He finally made it across the water just in time for 2 turns. Like he had 2 turns worth of attacks, but he had to rebuild the entire American Navy. And you see Japan here is all mountain territory, right? It's really difficult to assault a normal territory, much more difficult to amphibiously assault a mountain territory. So, and once the Americans drop 5 or more transports down in the Pacific Ocean, then these guys are allowed to build $1 militia. So I just filled these 3 territories with $1 militia, plus dudes, and plus I had a commander there, and so there was nothing he could have done. Like he might have been able to make some headway if he could have went for like 3, 4, 5 waves of attacks at it, but he only had 2 waves. The first wave hit, and I think I lost 2 militia. You know what I mean? And he lost everything. And then the second wave, he didn't protect it. He didn't protect his transports, and it flew over top of his navy and destroyed all the transports with 1 plane. So that was a big mistake. But even if that wave of transports had gotten through, there's like 5 or 6 of them, he still wouldn't have taken out my island. And so that's a devastating move. And so that's why I've been very careful with the Americans here not to move up to Hawaii, and to keep an eye on the Japanese and what they're doing. Because if the Japanese move closer, then they can hit here, right? Like if the Japanese move to Caroline Island here, where there's a naval base, then I know that what they're doing, right? Or what they could do. Like you could move down here with the Japanese and then go for the Money Islands if you wanted to, right? But this puts the Americans in harm's way right here. So for that big strike. So what you would do with the Americans then is that you would split up your navy, right? Like you'd move some navy here, 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 and some navy down here, because they can only hit 1 space where they got that big strike. And so if your stuff isn't all grouped together, then they can kick somebody really hard, but it's only going to be a couple of boats, right? And then the Americans, they're all going to congregate on top of the Japanese Navy and boot fuck them, you know? So like these are things you got to watch for, right? And that's why this is such an interesting part of the game. So with the Americans not moving, oh, the other thing is too, I didn't spend any money on the other side of the board until right now, until just now. The American turn ended, the Americans and the Chinese go last, right? But I didn't spend any money on the other side of the board over here in the east until now. I put 2 transports down and 1 elite marine. That's all I've done over here. And then over on this side here, I didn't put any ground troops down at all. See, that's what I've done before in the past whenever I've played the Allies is, with the Americans starting at 6 IPP, I mean, you can't buy much with 6 IPP, right? So I'd buy a dude or something, you know, and buy another kind of dude. So like by now I'd have a bunch of Marines here, but my Navy would be smaller, right? So instead of doing that this time, what I did was I started buying boats, but you know, like you're only paying a few bucks at a time over here, right? So, you know, like you start payment plans on boats, start more payment plans on more boats, more payment plans on more boats. I've still got 2 over there. And you look at the ones that I've got down here now, I think I bought 1 battleship and 1 or 2 fleet carriers that I put down. So that's what I've done with the American money. That and I've lent at least a couple of times to the British, once or twice, I think. Probably twice. And then also, so that's what the Americans have done, and so that's why it would be tough for the Japanese to surprise them. If I hadn't seen that move and how devastating it was here in Hawaii, then I might have just moved them up, thinking, "Oh, I'm allowed to move to Hawaii now. My income's at I think it's 35. You get to move up to Hawaii if you want." Not a good move. So anyway, what the Japanese have done instead is they've poised themselves to hit everything, right? See, they've got a Navy down here. They've got all their planes down here because they just took out the road here in Yunnan. There's the road just like there is in G40, right? So they took Yunnan. They've only got 1 space here left to take. They're pretty sparse in here with units. Because they haven't gone after money, right? They haven't gone after the big income. And so their income has been quite low. Like they're only at 33 right now on the ticker tape there. You know, the income tracker, they're only at 33. They get a few bonuses as well in China, but that's pretty low income for them. And so they haven't been able to buy a lot. They have bought a few boats and stuff, but not many. Anyway, they've kind of split their boats up because some of their boats up here can reach down here, and the other boats, like the boats that I put down here and here, can reach down to these Dutch islands. One of the things you want to make sure that you do is you do it all at once, like you do it in concert with the Germans. You see that Dutch guy up there, the orange guy? That's the capital up there. So if you would have attacked any of these Dutch islands down here, or attack that guy up there, then that makes all of the Dutch territories, and I think there's 11 IPP worth. Plus, you see there's quite a few units as well, right? There's 3 boats up there in Europe, and there's 5 boats down here. What happens is those units all become British, and the money all goes to the British, and that's 11 IPPs. And so when you do it, like if the Germans had taken out Holland up there a long time ago, or the Netherlands, I mean, if they'd have taken the Netherlands out, then all of this money and all of this stuff would have went to the British, right? So you got to be careful about that. You want to make sure that you hit it all at once. And so now on this turn, Germany is going to hit that, and Japan is going to hit this. I don't think that they're going to have enough to take Calcutta this turn. So what they're going to do is they're going to go get their money, and just like in Global 40, there's a lot of money down here to be had for them. It's not just that these islands are worth money, but there's bonuses down there for them to get too. It's not the same types of bonuses where you have to have all of the islands. I think like there's a bonus here, there's a bonus here. I think there's a bonus here. So, and you know, like Malay here is a bonus. So if you take out these islands down here, then the Japanese income is going to increase, right? And so Japan can start building up more boats then, and then they can think about going after Calcutta. There's only one victory point here for the British. and that's if like I think the British keep their territories that have the numbers on them, like this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, territories that are worth money. So you're not really doing much by taking this out, unless of course they're strong enough to hit the Japanese. Then of course that's a problem. But they don't have many boats here, and so it's it just depends on how the next few turns work out. If I go after the British or not, or if I just defend against the Americans, because the American income is going to be larger than the Japanese. The Americans have already got a large navy, so I'm planning on hitting these islands down here, taking them out, and building navy, right? And trying to move as many boats up there as I can to get back into the navy, while at the same time leaving a few boats down here, because these guys are these are the guys that I'm going to be fighting over these islands for. You're going to be fighting the Aussies over these islands, and who knows, these guys might get involved. The Italians are going to have to get involved over here with the British to keep the British from coming over here and helping out against the Japanese. Anyway, you can see what an interesting time in the game this is. There's I've learned a little bit about it, but man, there's so much to learn about this. It's going to take me years, and I love that. I love the fact that every time you play this game, you learn something new. Global 40 is the same way, but at a certain point, you stop learning, right? Then it's all okay. There's one of 10 things that's going to happen on the Pacific side of the board, and then you can start to see, okay, it's going towards these 3 things. Okay, we've narrowed it down to that one thing. You know what I mean? Whereas this, it's going to take years to discover all of the different things that you can do, different ways with the political situations and with the sea zones the way they are, with the Dutch in here. Like if you get bored of the way it is, then you can play the Netherlands at War expansion set, where the Dutch are their own country. It just goes on and on and on. So much here could happen in China that I haven't even seen yet. Like, I haven't even seen the Chinese go to war with each other yet. The communists and the nationalists. So there's lots that could happen over here, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming years of discovering all the different ways that the battle in the Pacific goes. Anyway, so I'm going to stop this here, and I'm going to play the rest of the turn after I go out and shovel my fucking driveway again. I just shoveled it last night. I come in last night and shoveled for an hour and a half, and I was just dead tired, and I didn't play this game last night. And I get up this morning, and there's a fucking foot of snow in my driveway again. So I gotta play a couple turns, go out there and shovel it, come back in, finish it off. Take care, everyone. I'll see you after my driveway's clear and this year is over with. Oh, one thing about this that I should mention though, the reason why the Japanese are going to go now is that the Americans are going to reach that income, and I told you that, but there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to reach that income. Like, they could roll a 1 or a 2, but all they need to do is roll a 3, and then they can declare war, and then the Japanese lose that ability to go with that strike, because they still have that strike. Like, they could use it against Calcutta if they wanted, or they could use it against these islands if they want. Like, I haven't even decided what I'm going to do. If I've got enough to go against Calcutta now, I can use that big strike that they have and maybe take Calcutta out. I don't know, but we'll see. If not, then I'm certainly going to take out one of these islands with that strike. So that's why they're going to declare war now on everybody, because the Americans are about to declare war anyway. So anyway, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so we're just finished 1941, and everybody's in the war except for Italy, bunch of chicken shits. Anyway, I thought I'd start here down at the Money Islands there, because that's where we kind of ended off 6 months ago. And as you can see, the Japanese have taken over pretty well. So they took over the Philippines, and they took over, there's 2 territories in here. They took over those 2, and they took over this one. They couldn't take over more than that. Like, they wanted to get this one back in here, because that's another one with a bonus. But they didn't plan it out well enough ahead of time, so they didn't have enough ground units. to do it, right? They had enough transports, they just didn't have enough ground units to get, like they could have got Sumatra, but they could not have got this one down here because there was a cruiser here, and then the Netherlands had a couple of boats here, so those acted as blockers. Like I couldn't have went for Calcutta even if I wanted to because of that cruiser there. And then when I was talking about it earlier to you, I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, I put that cruiser there for a reason. So that prevented them from coming down here to get these guys down here. Geez, what am I? Oh, I know. I was wondering what the hell happened to these boats. Yeah, so when the British turn came, they had a couple of boats down here that they got from the Netherlands, and they came up here, took out a couple of boats that the Japanese had sitting there that had taken out that cruiser, and also the coastal sub had come down, but the Japanese outrolled them, so all the boats were lost. Like this plane, there's a plane over here on Calcutta that was in there too. Everything was lost except for that plane, so the Japanese beat them there, three boats to two. But anyway, they did. The Japanese did pick up quite a bit of money. I forgot to count this one here. Oh, there we go. So that's another $2 there. So the Japanese are up to $39, plus there's a bunch of bonuses. The other development, because there's so many people at war now, is that there's a lot more. As you can see here, there's a lot more of these things on the board. That's the prison labor camps. So what I did was I put one on for these guys and one for these guys when they went to war with Japan. And I didn't put one on for the British. When the British, when the Italians decide to go to war, that's when the British will get their last one. So the Americans did get one. Actually, they got two because they also declared war on Germany. So they've got a couple of them back in here. Chicago in the heartlands back there. Yeah, the British Navy is just getting huge up there because they got those boats from the Dutch. They just put a fleet carrier on. That's the first one that they've bought. I think that's the first capital ship that they've bought in the game. And the Italians would have went for it this turn, but the British moved a whole bunch of more boats in here. So the Italians can't get them now. So they've got to wait now until the British decide to leave. Like the British have got to move some boats out of there. Otherwise, it's just going to be a suicide run. So what I did with the Italians and what I'll do next turn is I bought a fighter. I think what I'll do is I'll just start working on their Air Force and build it up. And then, you know, like at some point in time, they're going to have to go after those British boats because they can't just go and start attacking land up there. What'll happen is then they'll have to split up their boats between these two sea zones here. Like there's a line here that you can barely see. So that's another sea zone. So the British can go around them and attack the capital. Or, you know, like the other thing is the Italians are going to have to break up their boats half and half. And then they're vulnerable to the British. That's when the British can move in and wipe out half their boats, right? So the Italians kind of waited a little bit too long there. They waited. They weren't expecting the British to do that. And when I say they, I mean me. I'm the one playing everybody. But you know what? I just play, when I get there, I'm playing one country. I forget about everybody else and I just play that one country. So down here, these guys, what did they buy? They bought a destroyer. They really wanted to. They had enough stuff. They really wanted to come up here and hit one of these groups of boats, but it would have really been a suicide run though because I don't know that. Like they might have been able to take these ones out, but they would have lost all their boats. And with all of these other Japanese things down there, then the Australian homeland would have been in jeopardy. So I thought I'd better wait until some of these guys. Like these guys are going to have, some of them are going to have to go back to Japan because the American fleet's going to start coming across the water, right? So I decided I might as well keep building and wait until I can get them when they don't have so much built up down here. Because right now it's just, you're just going to go down there and that'll be it for you, right? The other couple of developments over on this side of the board is that I've been rolling for partisans every turn, right? But I just can't roll a partisan. And then this turn, just bang, 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 partisans everywhere. So the two things that happened was the Japanese took out the last Chinese territory there. Well, actually, there is a territory left, but it's not worth anything, and there's no Chinese units on the board. So the Chinese are out of it. Like you could see, both the communists and the nationalists, they're out of the game now. For now, unless somebody goes in there and starts taking territories for them, or the partisans rise up and I don't know, like the Japanese are going to have to be pretty darn distracted for the partisans, or the partisans are just going to have to get some wicked rolls, right? But anyway, like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 partisans that got rolled just in China alone that turn there. And I couldn't roll a partisan to save my life before that. I think there was one in Paris. That was it. Also, the Russians managed to roll a couple of partisans this turn. So finally, some partisans started appearing on the board. And you see the American Navy over here. It's pretty big. This turn here, when the Americans went to war, they got to buy all their ground units for 1 IPP cheaper. So the only boats I bought was a transport, and I paid off the Iowa class battleship, and I threw down another Iowa class battleship over here, and then moved the carrier along. That's it for boats, and they had a lot of money, right? So most of my money was spent. I would have liked to have bought more things like this, like the elite Marines and the regular Marines and these guys. But these guys here, with my rule, you can only buy 1 per turn. And these things here, by the global war rules, you can only buy 2 of each type of specialized infantry at a time. And so I was only able to buy two Marines and 2 elite Marines. Otherwise, I would have bought more of that kind of stuff, right? And then over here, again, a whole bunch of stuff. A few dudes. I bought a few artillery, and then a Marine and elite Marine. And the other thing they did, this was German territory. It had been a German territory because the Russians had taken Portugal. So all of the Portuguese colonies, like you see all where the German pies are down there, those were Portuguese colonies. Now they're German. So these guys came out here and they took that out. They did it as quickly as they could because they want to put a naval base down there. That's going to be the halfway point to getting there. One of the new rules that is in this game, here, let me just set this down. One of the new rules that is going to be in this game next year, or at least a proposed rule, they're going to be playtesting it this February, is a rule where you can non-combat a certain number of your ships 5 spaces. So that's quite a bit, right? But it's got to be from naval port to naval port. So, and in this game, you can't use your allies' naval port. So if the Americans can take out, say, this naval port down here, there's a couple of them in there that they could get, then they would be able to start a transport shop. Like, here's 1 turn over here, here's 2 turns over here, and then they could get their transports all the way back, right? And then again, and then all the way back. That would be handy if that rule came into effect. And I don't see why not, because we're talking about a 6-month turn, and you can definitely sail across the Atlantic in 6 months. And that's why they want to do it, right? Is because of that, because it's not really realistic for you to go 6 months and only be able to go a couple of 1,000 miles with your boats, right? I mean, you should be able to do that in a few weeks. So anyway, I don't know if I should throw that rule into my game here. Like, it hasn't been an issue at this point. I guess I should not, because I didn't start with it. But that could be one of the rules. But anyway, that's why I took this space here, was to be able to put that Navy base down. Because unlike Global 40, it's a little further to get across the water in this game. There's just more sea zones, right? It's kind of like there's an extra one in here. Otherwise, you know, you go there and there and there and there and there and there. But once you get over here, like you don't have a naval base, so you're only going 2 spaces, right? And so they're gonna have to get one of these naval bases, and they can't take this one. Like they take the French territory. It's not like in the Global 40 game where you can go and take that French territory because France doesn't have a capital. You get to use their like you get the Americans get this territory. It's not like that. In this game here, if the Americans take Normandy out, then that becomes French again. It becomes Free French. And so that's not going to work, right? You have to take something which is a neutral. It's going to have to be one of these, right? Or it's got to be a German territory. There's just no other way for the Americans to get a naval base over here. So that's going to be a problem, and that's one that is going to take probably a number of games until bingo, it all of a sudden comes to you. Anyway, the other thing that's happened here is the Barbarossa has gotten underway. When last we talked, they was just about ready to do that. So that's the first thing that happened, and you can see these things have moved up here. But they don't have as much stuff on them over there, right? Because there was some blitzing going on. So that means you're going to start breaking apart some things. And you can see there's a guards troop here. That's because the way you get guards now is like this territory was taken by the Germans, and then the Russians took it back, so that guy got to become a guard. If there was 2 guys there, then both of them would have become guards. And same over here, like 2 of them became guards over here, right? When they took this space back. But the Germans have this city here, but there's another thing in the game called Scorched Earth, where you can torch your factories and air bases and things like that, or you can move your factories. So they've already moved one of their factories, minor factories, earlier in the game. They moved that factory back to here, and this large factory here was right here. So it's moved to here on this last turn, but they've torched an air base. So that's why I've got this thing here, because the first time somebody takes over that territory after you've done the Scorched Earth thing, they can take it over, but they don't get the money for it. So after this turn is over, after the German, have they gone a turn yet? Oh yeah, so I can take this off now because the Germans have already collected their money, right? So now the Germans will be able to collect money. But anyway, that I thought that would work pretty good using that on there so that I would remember. I'm going to leave it back on there now because I haven't added that to their income. So I'll leave that there. It might be not be until tomorrow until I pick the game up again. So then I'll see that and I'll add that to the Germans' income. Anyway, so the Germans hit them pretty hard. The Russians didn't have much to hit them back with. Like you can see, the Germans are over here as well, right? I had to move some guards back from over there because these guys can break through over here. When I move this factory, that takes 2 of your movement points, and you only get 2 in Russia. But with the guards rules, you can also move a guard, like an extra movement capacity, but it has to be used for a guard. So I was able to bring this guy up. But you really, really, really don't want the Germans busting through here, because if the Germans take this space here, if they manage to get this space, then they get Turkey. Turkey just becomes theirs. So you take all these Turkish units off and replace them with German units. You know, like we're talking a fighter, we're talking a factory, some dudes, artillery, like all that stuff becomes German if they could take Transcaucasia. So you can't let them through here, right? Anyway, the Russians are now, they've got, like this turn here, they've gotten a lot more income, and you can see here they've got now they've got their labor camp. The Germans have got a couple of labor camps now. Actually, I think they should get. I'm gonna have to put another one. They've got one here, one here. And I have been trying the prison breaks. The only time I try them is when I've got a buck left over for somebody, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with a buck, right? So I just, oh yeah, right, prison camps. And so, but I think I've tried it 5 times in this game, and only once has it been successful. So
that'll even out, right? Like you got a 1 in 3 odds of getting it. Anyway, so why not, right? Like you spend that dollar doing it, and if you either get a dude or your opponent gets that dollar to spend for themselves, right? So the money just keeps going back into the game. And as you can see back here, the Russians did manage to, at the start of their turn, manage to develop heavy armor. Actually, a lot of weaponry. I'll show you that before we go. A lot of weaponry was developed. So these tanks here go down on Tankograd, and they were all $1 cheaper. That's good for the Russians, and they did manage to take out Finland as well. So, so they were able to get like they already had a guard right here, right? This guy's a guard. They got 2 guards here, 2 small tanks that are guards. I couldn't make more. Like if I had a dude there, I could. But when you take a space outside of Russia, then you can get up to 2 guards. But one of them has to be infantry. So I didn't have an infantry over here in order to do that. So, but then one of these guys was already a guard. So I was only able to make one more of them a guard. And this guy was already a guard too. I couldn't do anything about that. Anyway, the German Navy is just getting so powerful. Like they just picked up this boat too from Norway after the Russians took Norway out. So their Navy is getting really, really powerful. The Russians moved theirs up here. There's a thing here. See this this little kind of river here? There's a little canal in here. I believe, I'm going to read the rules, but I'm pretty sure that you can only go through there with subs. So I'll be able to get this sub into there to help out over here. But I don't think I'm going to be able to get the other boats through there. If nothing else, I might just go for a suicide run or something. Or maybe I'll just keep them up here, just in case the Germans decide to come around, do an end around, right? At least they'll have to take out some boats first before they can get through. And nothing's happened on this line, this over here. Neither side cares about too much about attacking each other because they've both got bigger fish to fry, right? The Japanese wanted to work the Chinese, and then of course they're gone to war with everybody else over there. And the Russians, they've got their hands full over here. So if one side doesn't attack, then the other side's not going to attack. At some point in time, somebody's probably going to call somebody else's mother some awful name, and then somebody will yell out "World Star" and whip out a camera, and the fight will be on. Anyway, what else? I told you about the mix-up that I had here. Otherwise, the Germans would be doing a lot better. I think that's about it. Oh, the weapons. I wanted to show you the weapons. I'll show you the whole board. So there we are there. The Americans' income has gone all the way up to 73. Would be 75, but Hawaii, not Hawaii, they lost the Philippines there, right? So, and the Germans are next, what is that, 48 IPP? And then everybody else is a lot lower. The Japanese are starting to creep up. And the Japanese get a lot of bonuses. A lot of their income is bonus income, so they actually get quite a bit more than that. Now, over here, there's been a lot of movement on this board over 1941. I think the Americans managed to move up quite a bit. The Russians have developed jet aircraft, and they developed heavy armor. And my order of shapeways there's heavy tanks and there's MiG fighters, and I don't have them. They're somewhere in BC now, but not in my greedy little hands. So I'd like to be able to put those on the board, but I can't. But they've also they've got advanced mechanized and advanced artillery. They're pretty much sticking to the ground stuff, right? That's really what they need. And the Germans, they've got their heavy armor. They've moved along on jet aircraft. The Americans and the British moved up on jet aircraft on this round as well. The Americans, they've only got one more to go for heavy bombers. And then the Germans are going to be in trouble. And yeah, probably just the Germans, because of the nature of the bombers in this game. You don't use them to attack boats, right? So it's not really going to help that much against the Japanese. And then down a little bit lower there, wartime economy, the Japanese almost have it. That's where you get 2 6-sided dice and you roll them, and that's how much extra money you get. And the British, the Americans, and the Japanese are working on improved shipyards, but they really haven't had a whole lot of success to this point. So anyway, that's where it stands at the end of 1941. It is nice for a change to see the Americans go to war when they were supposed to go to war. You know, like they went, they Pearl Harbor happened, was it December 7th, 1941? So that's when they should have entered the war, is this turn, right? And so it's nice to see them enter the war on time. I was mentioning earlier these 3 things here, they go on the board as soon as they go to war with America, so that the Japanese got those for free. It doesn't look like they have much of a navy, but when you look down in the Money Islands down there, there's a lot of boats down there. They're just all spread out. So they're going to have to get them congregating together again, because the Americans can just pick them off one by one if they don't. And they're going to have to start buying more too. But they can afford to buy more now. Now that China's out of the way, they just have to start buying enough stuff to keep the British out, and finish taking the Money Islands, and then it's between them and the Americans after that. So anyway, that's it. Hopefully I'll get back at this game tomorrow. I don't know when the next video will be out. It'll be tomorrow or the next day. We'll see. And that'll be 1942. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.